How's it going, Sammy? Thank you for giving me some of your time. I just from the start, I don't know a whole lot about racing, but I really enjoy it, and I just kind of wanted to see how you got started. You know what your early experiences were, and what it's been like to race at the Chili Bowl.
Well, my dad started racing the same year I was born, just locally around Memphis. Uh, so I was always around the racing, through him. And I started in July of '71 with, he used to build his own cars and stuff, and he built a new one and just finished it up in the middle of the year and let me start from there with his older car.
So you won you've won five drillers. Um, and what does it mean when you say like it was my car, it was my first car? That mean you built it yourself?
Well, the first car I drove, my dad was building. It was a car that he ran like 2 or 3 years previous to me starting. So it wasn't a new car. It was just a car he built and or we built, and I ran that for a few years.
What sort of training do you do? Just getting out on the track and driving around?
Well, I do some, work out some. I have an elliptical and some weights and machines here at my house. I've had, for probably 40 years. So I do some things here. I mean, I've had some memberships to some gyms, but it just was just easier to do it here at home.
Do you have a track at your home?
No, not a track, just a place to work out.
Um, what
As
what about like the mental focus?
I don't know. It's just I've grown up around it, and you know, you know what you have to do. It's just like you have a job for 40, 50 years. You have your plans, and you know what you're going to do, and you just get it done.
I just talked to a knife maker, he's been making knives for 40 years, and he said that it's like breathing, like it's something that he has to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. This is what I've done most of my life. I mean, I've done other things, and besides racing, uh, that's mostly what I've done, and uh, been fairly successful at it, I guess.
When did your son start?
He started, well, we started him with go karts, and kind of went from there. We went from go karts, we moved up to 600, and from there we went to the sprint cars. So uh, he was able to catch on pretty quick and won quite a few, you know, go kart events and stuff. And I wouldn't let him move up in anything until he would like, almost dominate a series or whatever. So, uh, but just to make, he had to prove to me that he could win and was dedicated to do it, before we went to the next level.
So your dad would have been. Did he race his whole life as well?
Um, no, it's, I'm not sure when he started. He was probably 18 or 20 years old, I guess, something like that.
I would have
And
been.
he ran until he was in his 40s. When I started racing a little bit more, he wanted to. We raced together for about 3 years, and then he decided he wanted to watch me, more than he wanted. He drove enough races.
Did he? And you grew up in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, uh, just outside of Memphis.
And that's where you started in that circuit.
Yeah, yeah, they had some local tracks around here. My dad, I mean, before I started racing, he was the president of the club that ran the races around there. So he had just been involved in it my whole life.
And from there, how did you grow? How did your career grow?
Well, I started driving. I think it was like the second year I was racing. I had a guy that wanted me to run a sprint car for him. So I was running the sprint car. The cars my dad had were like modified. So uh, I was doing both classes. And then right after that, a guy wanted me to run a late model. And so I would run all three divisions. You know, the local track here. There was some places where we'd run just two divisions somewhere else that didn't run the other one, but so I got a lot of experience in different forms of racing very fast.
Um, what kind of car do you drive just on the road?
I've had mostly, you know, pickups or Suburbans or something SUV now. I have a HD 2500 Chevy Silverado and a Blazer.
That's interesting. That kind of tells me that there's like such a huge difference between the sport and I mean they're both cars, but when you're on the track, it's a totally different experience than it is when you're driving a grocery store.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot different, but the racing, especially the sprint cars, as quick as they've gotten over the years, is like things come at you really, really fast, and so you have to process a lot of things, and be able to look a lot of different places all at the same time, and if you can be real successful in like a wing sprint car that's probably the fastest car on dirt. So, when you get into something else, everything else is slower. And so, I guess, like with a computer, it's like, you wind up having like a really quick processor in your mind, and everything else you do is just really slowed down. If you get the sprint car, and I think that's where the better guys are than the ones that are just okay, is that they just can process things so fast. And that when you do drive something else, whether it's your street car or whatever, it's just you pay attention to a lot of things going on around that probably other people don't. I don't know. I've just grown up with it, so that's just the way it is for me. But I'm sure that's kind of the way it is with, I've seen some people, I've rode with some people, and they're just driving and like really missing a lot of things that I would see.
Do you have that like situational awareness all the time, or does it just kind of click in?
um, Yeah, most of the time. I mean, sometimes some of the trips that you're on when you're just like on a freeway or something, an interstate road, and you could get turned down a little bit. I don't think you could keep up being 10 or 12 hours with like your sprint car mentality. It would kind of wear you down, I think, uh, pretty quick to be that totally locked in. But I do think that it helps you be more aware of what's going on. It's like I'm looking in the mirrors a lot and doing a lot of things driving down the road. And I see people that I've rode with that don't do that.
So, I've been going to the Chili Bowl the last few years to cover it because it's fascinating to me. It's exhilarating to see, and I usually take my daughter with me. She's 4, and we were playing a game of pick who you think's going to win, and she started out going with the purple one or the pink one, and then she figured out. She said, "Oh, the one that's in the front." Um, but you have an ability to start towards the back or in the middle and still win. What does that involve?
Well, mostly just experience and being able to know how to get your car set up. I tell people a lot of times, or you know, for me racing when I go out, I just want to go for a ride. I want the car to be able to do all the work, and I'm just kind of guiding it, so that way I make fewer mistakes. And if you can get your car to do things that other guys can't, it makes it easier to pass them.
So a lot of the work is comes before the tires are even on the track.
Yeah, there's like your homework, I guess you could say, because you come there and you're prepared to. Well, like me, I was always trying to be prepared to win each night and look at it that way. For me, it wound up after a few years. I started and then was on the road. It was a business, and so the better I did, the more rewards I got. So the more things it let me do, the more money you would make, the more sponsors you'd have, uh, and it just kind of can snowball from there. So after I started racing, and I won the third night out that I ever raced, so I got used to winning real quick. And even the first year when I started in July, I won 6 races at the one track, and we ran another track on Friday that the first time I went there, I won. We won every race that year. So uh, it's maybe a little unusual for somebody just to jump in a car and win that many times or that often just starting out. But, I was in a good race car, but I've been working on my dad's car since I was 12 and doing a lot of stuff for him because he had a full-time job. So I knew how to do most everything before I started. And I think that's a big help. Uh, Sometimes it's a hindrance because sometimes you're out there racing and you get to thinking, well, I need to do this or I need to change this or so I think some guys that don't know anything, they just all they have to do is drive. And I think some days that it would be easier for me if I just had to drive. But I was interested in kind of controlling my own destiny and being able to run, which I did do for quite a few years. Was I would run a whole program for the car owner that I had at the time.
It's definitely I know it's a different experience, but I know that when you have a family and it's like, okay, I made some money doing this. I need to keep making money because it's not just me. This is not a hobby anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what it was me. I took it as a job. It's like, well, I can do this and I can do a good job at it and I can make money at it. And so I just have to put all my effort into it to do the best I can.
Did you have moments where you were like, I can't, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore.
I don't know. It's just always that, because of I guess the competition or the desire, it always, if you had a bad night, it's like, well, let's figure this out and do better. The whole goal was to win. And so if you just keep that in mind and, and you got to believe in yourself, it's like, I don't know. I've seen some guys just quit or changed, but for me, it was like, I'm just trying to learn more to be better. And, yeah, no, everything would work out.
So the different kinds of tracks, what is it? What's what are some of the differences between driving on um like a like like a track and like dirt?
Uh, well, the pavement, if that's what you're talking about,
Pavement. Yeah, sorry. I
with the
forgot
dirt,
that word.
uh, it's it's a lot the same, but it's still a little bit different. I mean, the pavement tracks don't change very that much, during an event, and the dirt tracks change a lot. So dirt tracks, you're always looking for where the grip is, and it can change drastically. Where the pavement track, it's like when you get there, it might change a little bit, or change if you're running in the daytime and it goes to nighttime, and there might be a little bit. And then after they run so many laps on it, the track may change some, but they're just way simpler than a dirt track, because a dirt track is changing. You might change your whole complete line, or a lot of times the way you run, if you run running the bottom of the track versus the top of the track, it's a whole different way of driving the car on the same track.
So is that a calculation you're making while you're driving?
Uh, yeah, yeah, it's some. I mean, but you know that if you're going to the bottom, you may have to slow down or get out of the throttle at some places. If you go to the top, you are going to carry. You've got to carry more speed because you're going further around, and it may make a difference in what you do in the car. With the steering wheel and the pedals. Depending on where you're running or what the track does, or sometimes the dirt tracks are different, or any track can be different because the corners at some places aren't the same on both ends. And know, I've always liked the ones that were harder because it made it easier. I didn't have to race with as many people that couldn't figure out how to make it work. Where if you just had some place where you just run wide open, well, then we all just run wide open.
What is it like to go to have a flip, to be in a car that flips?
Um, just when it gets off the ground, then you're really not in control. I mean, it's. Um, I remember when I was getting my pilot's license, and my instructor told me, he said, "You got to fly it all the way to the hangar." And he said some people have just get on the ground and it's like, "Oh, I'm done," and they weren't exactly done. It's the same with the race cars. You just gotta. I mean, if I'm flipping or something, it's like, well, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at or where I'm going, and there'll be times if like I'm going to hit on the back, well, I'll just go ahead and lean back, my head back, because you can't. But some guys want to like tense up against it, and you can't. And same way, if we're going to hit on the nose or something, it's like I'll just lean forward, because if I try to hold back, it'll like just your muscles get tight, and then you hit and it stretches. So you learn to like just kind of go with the flow.
Is it one of those experiences where time kind of slows down?
Yeah, sometimes seems like it takes a half hour. When you look at it, it takes a few seconds. But, it's the whole time I'm trying to just gain control again, or whatever control I might have, to make it stop or make it slow down or make it, easier on myself and the car. But uh, I don't know, maybe that's just me. I don't really hear too many people talk about that stuff, but what they do in a crash. But, I'm trying to get back in control.
So do you have your pilot's license?
Yes,
That's
yes.
cool. When did you get that?
I think it was in '79 or maybe '80, '81, somewhere back in there.
So you've been flying for a while.
Yeah, yeah, and I had my own plane for about 7 or 8 years.
How does that compare? That level of control.
It's just different. The things you, some of it kind of relates and some of it doesn't. I mean, I was fortunate. A friend of mine would work for a guy and he would deliver planes and pick up planes. And in the wintertime, he knew I wasn't racing. So it's like, well, come go with me. And so I got to fly a lot of different planes in a lot of different circumstances. And sometimes we would have, the one airport was down by the Mississippi River, and there'd be usually some time there that the water would get up, and they'd have to move all the planes. So they'd have a twin engine that held maybe 10 people. There might be 5 or 6 of us flying planes from one airport to the other, and then you get into one and drop back. And I said, well, which one do you want? He said, just get whatever one you want. That was a little bit different, just flying other people's planes. But it gave me an opportunity to be in a lot of different situations, I guess. Just go jump in a plane and take off.
So do you also? I mean, could you hop on a motorcycle or in a boat and understand the dynamics of that as well?
Yeah, yeah, I've had motorcycles most of my life, and now, well, been here where I live on the lake. You can only have a pontoon boat or a fishing boat, so that's really simple. They don't go that fast. They've got us on a really small motor, so there's not much you can do there. But the motorcycle I've got, they've changed quite a bit. There's some things that like uh, they have on it. You could go in a corner and you can lean it over and just go wide open on the throttle, and it knows how far you're leaning and what to do. But you have to be ready when you start to stand it back up, because then it really will, it goes back to full power. So it's some of the electronic stuff they have on a lot of things now is a lot different, and things we can do. I'm, I'm not sure too many people know how to do that part on just a motorcycle, but it does work.
That's a part of what's really impressive about what you've done is, in any kind of sport, once you win the biggest prize, everybody looks at exactly how you did it, the equipment you used, your methods, and you're sort of exposed. And so after that, the test becomes like, well, now that everybody's equalized, can you win again?
Well, part of it is just to keep as much as you can to yourself, and sometimes you throw things to make them look somewhere else when the important stuff is over there. But some things I've learned from being around, I got to be friends with Smokey Yunick, and he was probably a master at that. But it's some of the racing I've done, I've got to meet a lot of really, really smart people. And it's taught me to think outside the box a lot.
What are some of your either your favorite races or your favorite nights, or the ones you revisit?
It's hard. There's been so many places that I've won at, that they all have a little bit different place, I guess, or memories. Um, some of it that when I was started on the road with the World Outlaws and ran some, is like, well, when I go to the track, I would kind of look at that track and say, well, what does this track look like? When you see it, it looks like this other track that I've raced on that I've done well. So it gave me a little bit of a heads up on, well, I'll just run the setup that I ran at that track that kind of looks like this track or reacts like this track. But a lot of it is just like, there's really not many that are exactly the same. They're always a little bit different, whether it's the corners or the radius or the banking is different and where it fall. If you learn all the little nuances of a track, every one of them's different.
What about the moment when you're either getting out of the car after you just won, or lifting the trophy, or holding the giant check?
It's well, the winning part's easiest because it makes the next race a lot easier because you're not having to fix anything, not having to do anything too much. I mean, it's just do your normal maintenance and do the setup for the next track. Whereas if you're had a bad night, and that's what I do a lot of times, is you'll find things that aren't right or things not to do. That if you have a setup that didn't work or whatever, it caused you not to win or not to finish good. I've found over time, that you'll find more things that you did wrong than you do a lot of times. But there's only so much you can do to be right, I guess. But it's easy to be off a little bit. So it's like I always want to find out what was off.
I like that approach because what I hear a lot is winning as from other people. Winning makes it harder because then there's this pressure like, oh, now I got to win again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it was ever pressure for me because that was the whole goal. Or I just took it as that's what I want to do. That's what I'm here for. And I mean, a lot of times for me is when you won, it was like the pressure was off because I completed the goal for the night. And we just move on to the next one and try to do it again.
Have you ever played Mario Kart?
A little bit, yeah.
Um, what like any sort of racing video games? Is that realistic at all? Obviously Mario Kart is not realistic, but are there some good simulators out there?
I've only done a little bit of that, but the racing one, the sprint car one I've been on, the tracks are really close, but the setups for the cars are really weird than that. But I did have when they came out with the Formula One stuff, I did that, and I learned how to beat that pretty quick too. But kind of skip some of I'll just go run some corners and go back to the garage and make changes and get it to where. I mean, I think the first one they had, it's like I was at one track and I was like 4 seconds faster than anybody else, so it was pretty easy to win. And went through all the tracks, which I've been a Formula One fan forever, so it was kind of cool to do that. There was a lot of things you could do. You change the gearing, you change just so many things on there, and that made it, you know, more special for me. Other than just having a game that you run around in, you can do a couple things, and that's it.
So like the customization aspect.
Yeah, yep. Just all the things you could change. Like some of them were really, really intricate, and I've run some of the stock car stuff and like the NASCAR things a little bit, but there's just so many. It would take a little bit because sometimes, like I said, to me the stuff they run on the sprint car deal doesn't make sense, but it works. So the stuff that on another style car, I have to find the stuff that doesn't make sense but works. Until you find out how the game's put together and how to beat it. It's like you just got to go through all this trial and error stuff, and uh, but it was always like a lot of things. I could just run a few laps or something and say, well, I got to change this or I got to do this, unless it's something where the track changes and or the tires change, they have fall off or whatever. But you just have to learn what the rules are and learn how to beat it. But it, like I said, it just didn't interest me a lot because it just didn't feel that you don't feel the sensation or anything. It's more just your hand-eye coordination and doing that. You don't have a feel.
The full body experience.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what's lacking.
yeah. Like you can't really tell if you're going to spin the tires or and some of the things don't fall in line to what the real time actually is. So it's harder for me to like go from like racing stuff all the time to get in a simulator. But I'm sure they have some that are really, really close because, but what I had was just a little screen and a steering wheel and some pedals. So it wasn't any real extravagant piece, but I'm sure you could spend a lot of money and to play a game, and I wasn't really interested in it. I just had a little fun at it and moved on.
Well, that's all I got. Unless there's anything I should have asked or there's anything else that's on your mind.
No, no, it should be okay.
Maybe we can play Mario Kart together someday.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Sammy.
Yeah,
I'm just
thank
going
you.
to hit stop here.
Okay.